and welcome everyone. My goodness, time is flying. We are now on webinar 4 of a series of 7. So we're so excited to be bringing you this information because we really believe that it will make a difference in how you do your work, but I think more importantly, with the impact it will have on North Carolinians with disabilities across our state. So as we get started, I do want to let you know that during today's presentation, you're going to hear not just from me, but you're going to hear from Barton Cutter and also Pat Kuehl. And we have an opportunity to really sample an accommodation during today's presentation. Barton understands that at times when he speaks, it's difficult to understand what he says. And so he invites you to really leverage your listening, listen as intently as you can. But if you don't have, if you have difficulty understanding something he says, please use the chat box. Ask him to repeat himself. That is absolutely appropriate, and he invites you to do that. To text you or email you after today's presentation. Again, this is just a great to really demonstrate a very simple accommodation. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So our presentation and the work that we have been focused on at DisabilityIn through the North Carolina Employment Collaborative has a purpose to really increase the employment opportunities for North Carolinians with disabilities through their disability inclusive cultures in the NC Works Career Centers. The video that was created as part of this effort is available on Train. And we encourage you, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at that, please do so. We encourage you to use that as you move forward in building more inclusive cultures through the NC Works Career Centers. We also have a toolkit available with a number of different types of resources and supports. Again, none of this could be possible without the support of the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities, as well as the partners listed here that played a role in the North Carolina Employment Collaborative Council. Over the last 3 years, these partners have been meeting to really dig deep into what we can do to create more inclusive, welcoming cultures for our job seekers with disabilities across our communities here in North Carolina. Next slide. So today's topic, which I love and I'm very excited about, disability employment inclusion and the business case. Now, I have been in this space for over 20 plus years, and if I had a quarter for every time I had a business leader come to me saying, okay, so why is this important? How many people do we have with disabilities? I would be not on this webinar, but I would be on a beach somewhere in I don't know where, some warmer place. But the reality is this is an extremely important topic for businesses. And so we believe that as we equip you today with the skills and the data, that you're going to be more confident as you engage with employers in this conversation. So the next slide. As we think about the focus, again, we're going to share some really important data with you, some statistics that we hope that you take note of, and that you use this as you again engage in conversations, not just with employers, right, that are kind of kicking the tires on this idea of building a more diverse culture and including people with disabilities in their work, in their employment, in their workforce, but also the proven benefits of hiring those job seekers with disabilities. And you know, some of the toughest sells you may have as staff in the NC Works Career Centers are the conversations you're going to have with those job seekers that you know have either disclose that they have a disability or may not have yet disclosed, but you know that they may need some supports. And so really encouraging them with this information that there is a valued investment in hiring job seekers with disabilities. Next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Barton Cutter now. He's just going to talk to us about a little bit of the review on disability and how we define that. Barton?
Yeah, so, so remember that the way disability is defined by the ADA is a physical or mental impairment that that affects limits one or more major life activities because of there is a very wide range of disabilities that impact 1 in 5 Americans. And what's more striking is that as much as 74% of those disabilities are not apparent, I you would not know just from meeting the first let's say so so 1 in 5 Americans comes up to about 19% of the population, and that is the third biggest market segment around. Not only are 1 in 5 American people with disabilities one out of 3 families are related to at least one person with a disability. This means that when you combine family, friends, and people with disabilities, this represents over $1 trillion in the marketplace. So it's a huge thing. No, but back to that.
Thank you, Barton. And so if we consider a return on investment, right, and exactly what that means, and we hear it all the time, it is part of the really the argument here. Why? I've had a diversity strategy for a long time. Why is it worth my spend, right? What is the profitability? And I think that as a segment, and I say as a segment because as Barton just shared with you, 74% of disabilities are non-visible. I will disclose to you now, I have a disability. I was born with low vision and have been legally blind since birth. And so when I think about the profitability and that message to businesses, I often think that there is a reluctancy for businesses to demonstrate. I think it took us a long time to get here into this conversation. Why? Because I think historically disabilities has been seen as a charity. And we know that, in charitable giving, you don't expect to get anything back, right? There's not a return on that investment, or we should give with the expectation when you're giving charitably that you're helping, but you're not necessarily expecting a return on that investment. Well, I'm here to tell you that those days are over when it comes to the investment opportunities and what businesses are now finding as it relates to the return on that investment. So if we look at the next slide, if we consider just 1% of the unemployed persons transitioning from off the sidelines to employment, the GDP could get a boost of up to $25 billion. Now, if you have seen the video that was created as part of this the Employment Collaborative work, you have heard that statement. And if you haven't, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. As I said before, it is available on Train now. But this is important because this really does demonstrate the impact that individuals with disabilities, North Carolinians with disabilities, have on the growth and the growth of our economy and the health, I would say, of our economy as well. Next slide. And so if we consider, again, the market impact, $1 billion market segment, that is huge when you consider consumers with disabilities. Now, I don't know about you, but I would imagine that the employers and the businesses that you work with that sell services and products would not have any issue with tapping in to that $1 billion market. If we think about their family and friends and associates, which we're going to share in just a moment about kind of that impact on consumers when they learn that companies are employing people with disabilities or have a disability inclusion strategy as part of their overall diversity strategy, it matters. So again, a significant impact and segment for us to consider as we think about the business case. Next slide. If we consider the talent pool, again, 29.9 million persons with disabilities in the United States, recognizing these numbers are from 2020, we know that number has grown significantly over the last year or two. Of that population, 15.1 million persons with disabilities are of working age. That means ages 16 to 64. We know, again, that there are over 700,000 North Carolinians with disabilities. You'll see 689,612 here. Again, those numbers continue to increase based on, again, our experiences over the last year and a half. Of that 15.1 million American or North Carolinians, Americans, with disabilities, only 4.4 million are employed. So again, demonstrating the huge opportunity that we have to tap into a talent pool that has just been underused for a very long time. So as we consider our next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Pat, who's going to talk more deeply about the brand loyalty and return on investment. Pat?
Thank you, Beth. So the return on investment also translates to a return in terms of brand loyalty. When polled, 92% of Americans view companies that hire people with disability more favorably than companies that do not. In other words, When you walk into a store and you see an individual with disability who is part of the staff of that store or part of the staff of that office, it does influence your attitude about that particular business or that particular organization. Likewise, 87% of consumers, when polled, will tell you that they actually prefer to shop and to engage with companies that employ people with disabilities. So this is a huge statement around the way the public views the companies that they do business with and the level of brand loyalty they're willing to associate with their dollars when they go out shopping or engaging with other businesses. Next slide, please. So you're going to hear a little bit more about Accenture and the number of different studies and research that they've been doing on inclusion and diversity and employment of people with disabilities. We pulled this one out because it's quite interesting. 55% of shoppers would actually switch if a retailer does not take responsibility for its own negative inclusion and diversity incidents. In other words, if you are a shopper and you witness something going on that appears to be exclusionary, maybe it's a restaurant that didn't have large print for an individual with a vision problem, or maybe it's the fact that the restaurant was inaccessible or the store was inaccessible to someone in a wheelchair, you're going to think carefully about, do I want to come back here? I've had many experiences in my life going out with individuals, my friends and my business associates with disabilities, and discovering some of the architectural and also some of the human barriers that they face. And I can guarantee you that for me personally, it does change my opinion when an organization or a business is not inclusive and not accessible. 55% of shoppers agree with me. And now I'm going to turn it back to Beth.
Thanks, Pat. And I would just add as well, and I think I'm so encouraged by the fact that the more I see individuals with disabilities portrayed, even in commercials, I know that brand, that product sticks in my mind and maybe that's just because I'm a practitioner in this space, but I would encourage you all, if you haven't, start paying attention to the commercials that you're watching. And take note of those companies that are right out in front sharing and reaching this segment of the population by again using opportunities to reach out and include individuals with disabilities in their commercials and in their product development. So if we think about the Disability Advantage, best places to work for disability inclusion here in North Carolina, and some of you may be aware during our fall conference, we highlight many of the companies that are ranked among best places to work here in North Carolina. So I want to tell you a little bit about that because, again, many of those companies very well may be those employers that are coming to your career centers and seeking talent. And wouldn't it be fantastic if, as you grow those conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can, again, remind them that you have job seekers with disabilities that come to your career centers, and you can help with connecting those job seekers with employment as well. Next slide. So there is something called the Disability Equality Index. What this is a benchmarking tool designed by DisabilityIn, our national organization. It was created and developed back in 2014. And it's important for you to understand it was created with a group of individuals across disabilities, individual contributors, as well as family members, stakeholders, and businesses, all seeking to create a benchmarking tool that businesses could use that could help them get better in this space. It is a holistic approach to disability inclusion. It is an annual survey, and I share this with you not to sell this to you by any means. It is free. The PDF and the questions themselves are free. There is a process that companies can formally take it and register for it. But the questions are not a secret, and so I share that with you because many times we will encourage businesses, even small businesses, because ideally the benchmark, the tool was designed for Fortune 1000 companies and above. So that is a company with a very robust HR diversity program, but again, the value that companies and organizations as a whole can find in walking through these questions that range anywhere from the importance of executive level leadership, accessibility, both architectural accessibility, but digital accessibility, right? Is your website accessible? Your policies and programs, employment policies and practices. All of those things are part of this survey. Community outreach, relations, how are you showing up in the communities that you're doing business in? So again, and even supplier diversity is a part of that. So that takes us down to really recognizing the value of entrepreneurship among job seekers with disabilities. So next slide. So as we think about this survey, Accenture back in 2018 released a research that was done looking specifically at the companies that had spent some time engaging in best practices in hiring and supporting people with disabilities. Among those that were ranked among best places to work for disability inclusion, it was really an incredible piece of research because for the first time, we had some quantitative data that showed that when companies pay attention to this work, they have the opportunity and possibility of enjoying 28% higher revenue, 2 times the net income, and performing 30% better on economic profit margins. So for those that have those businesses that are really looking for an opportunity to return on an investment in this segment, I encourage you to, again, use these statistics, use this data as a way to open up the conversation. And you can see this full research as well out online. You can simply Google Getting to Equal, the Disability Inclusion Advantage, and you can read the full report. Next slide. When we think about characteristics of employees with disabilities, I want to point out a few here. And as I said earlier, I'm a person with a hidden disability, non-visible. You wouldn't know by looking at me that I have a disability. And while it's great to see a slide on the characteristics of employees with disabilities, I really, again, want to remind you that if you hire an individual with a disability, you're hiring an individual. Okay, the disability is just part of who they are, and so while these are important characteristics, I also don't want us to think that it's likely in every case, in every hire. I will tell you from a personal experience that yes, I do think that employees with disabilities are more loyal to their employers. Why? Well, because the process typically of hiring or finding employment for individuals with disabilities, as our statistics have demonstrated today, it's tough. So when you find an employer that is willing to create opportunities for you, people with disabilities do tend to be loyal and stay in employment. Demonstrating the ability to identify creative solutions. Again, I think Barton and I could do a whole webinar on just that, the innovative and creative things. And why is that? Because people with disabilities, particularly those that have have developmental disabilities and have had those since childhood, have gotten pretty darn creative, right, in finding workarounds and finding solutions, because we live in a world that's not fully accessible to everyone. And so that creates an opportunity for you to get real creative. I sometimes call it fake it till you make it. And I got to tell you, I've used that strategy quite a bit in my personal and professional career, because you have to find ways to work around the challenges. And then finally, I think, there is a willingness to experiment. There's a willingness to try new things. And I think, again, that comes from life experiences that so often job seekers and individuals with disabilities have and share. Next slide, please. So here is a quote from Ted Kennedy Jr., and I am just going to read it because, again, I do think it's a powerful statement that was made. Persons with disabilities present business and industry with unique opportunities in labor force diversity and corporate culture, and they're a large consumer market eager to know which businesses are authentically support their goals and dreams. Leading companies are accelerating disability inclusion as the next frontier of corporate social responsibility and mission-driven investing. Again, Ted Kennedy Jr. is a former Connecticut state senator. He also serves as board chair of the American Association of People with Disabilities. But what you may not know is that Ted Kennedy Jr. is a person with a disability. At age 10, he lost his leg to childhood cancer, and so he wears a prosthetic leg. Many don't know that, but he has been a tremendous champion. He's a strong partner and friend of DisabilityIn National, and I think really it makes a very powerful statement here, and is out on the front lines really charging companies to really look at their social responsibility and their missions, and encouraging them to continue growing this disability inclusion work within their organizations. Next slide. So at this point, as we did last week, we really want to engage you in some conversation. And so as you think about the topics that we've talked about, as you, again, our workforce grows more diverse, and we continue to include people with disabilities in our diversity strategies. How do employers provide that consistent experience for all employees, and not just hiring a person, but once you make that decision to hire someone, the opportunities for advancing, for leveraging the training and development opportunities that are available to all individuals within an organization. And then finally, considering a bias-free workplace. And I know you hear that quite often, but so much of our experience comes from what we have experienced in the past, right? Our thoughts about people with disabilities comes directly from our experience with individuals with disabilities. And so as we create these cultures where we're more inclusive of people with disabilities, I think it is important for us to recognize our own biases towards people with disabilities. And sometimes those are the most significant barriers to overcome. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for Colette so that she can have just an opportunity to share maybe some of the comments and invite you to engage with us with some discussion on this topic.
Fantastic. Thank you, Beth. And I will share that I put a question related to awareness surrounding unconscious bias in the chat box. And I want to give everybody an opportunity to respond to that, respond to some of the questions that Beth addressed on this slide. And while we're waiting, I did notice that our presenters have put some information and some links in the chat box that is not accessible to those that will be listening to our recorded version. So I'm going to quickly just go over that, and then we can post a supplemental document with the recording, pointing those that want to access some of these links post-session. But we had a few questions coming in about the toolkit video. And I want to address that it is posted on Train with our recorded online training section titled NC Employment Collaborative, the Toolkit. And you can access that at www.ncworkforcetraining.com. And that video is also posted on the Diversity in North Carolina website at https://di-nc.org, and you can navigate to that. And I'm also, let me pause right now. We actually have a comment that came in saying we can lead the way in helping employers see people as people, with disabilities or not. We are all more alike than we are different.
Absolutely. So true. So true. And what we know, right, is that of all the diverse segments, disability is the segment that if you live long enough, right, you're going to be part of the club, as you'll hear once in a while. It's true. And so it is important for us to recognize that. And I think the more opportunities we have to engage with individuals with disabilities, I think the more impactful and positive that overall experience and that attitude towards people with disabilities will change and develop.
Perfect. All right. And we have another comment that's come in. Hiring job seekers with disabilities will only make companies stronger, and the numbers show it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's true. And I'm gonna invite Pat and Barton both to comment on any of these questions as well. But yes, I agree with you. I think that the statistics and the research continues to show that companies that are paying attention to this and creating those cultures of inclusion, even in the virtual settings. And I think that's important to understand too. There's even more opportunities now that so many companies are more flexible than they've ever been as it relates to where you work. And so that too has opened tremendous opportunities for flexibility in scheduling and the types of work environments that many people with disabilities find great success in.
All right. And those are the comments that we have for now. So I'll turn it back over to you, Beth.
Fantastic. Thanks, Colette. And so the next slide, again, continuing the discussion, really want to invite you to consider how you may leverage the information that you've heard today and inform businesses about the benefits of hiring job seekers with disabilities. And we want to hear directly from you on what you're thinking, because here's what we know. We can share webinars week after week, but if there's not a willingness to take this information and leverage it and use it in the work that you do every day, it's just going to be words on a page. And so we really want to encourage you to step out and engage in these types of conversations with both the job seekers you work with and the employers. So I'm going to pause and turn it back over to Claudette for other
All right, fantastic. So I put one question in. The first one is going to be, how can you help to inform businesses about the benefits of hiring job seekers with disabilities? So if you can throw some of your comments in on that first question, I'd like to address those, and then we can move on to the second one in a few minutes. Beth, I'm going to read a couple, and more I'm sure will be coming in. The first comment is, focusing on the ability is my motto. We all have different abilities, and when employers think of hiring a person with disabilities as someone with a differing ability, the narratives will begin to shift. I also see include more visual and / social media photos, workshop topics, including overcoming perceived challenges, offering more staff training workshops, sharing information, encouraging employment staff to learn and engage with employers.
Absolutely. No question. And I totally agree. I think that the more that we engage with employers, because the relationships are already established, you're already working with employers, and we know that those employers are seeking a diverse workforce. And so really, I feel like it is a natural progression of that talent that so many employers are hungry for now. If they find that there's a talent pool that is available and ready, and I think that the conversation will be a very natural one.
Beth, this is Pat, and I'm struck by the comment about more visual and social media photos, because often you and I go into various different organizations and agencies, and we don't often find a lot of photographs that depict people with disabilities in valued competitive roles. And so that could be one of the first things you work on, is what sort of flyers, brochures, posters are you displaying in your offices and sharing with your businesses and with your job seekers? How can you insert some respectful, well-done pictures and portrayals of individuals and tell their stories? Once that's done subtly, the messaging can start to change and people's perceptions start to change. Martin, am I hearing you in the background?
Yes, sure. I'm also gonna put a plug in for our social media, because there are more resources on our LinkedIn and Facebook pages that will have some of those images. So feel free to draw from those.
Yeah, that's a great call out. That's a great call out. So we don't mind that you use whatever images that you might find through our Facebook or LinkedIn postings, and which leads to, right, the digital piece of this conversation, right? So if you're working with an employer and you go out to their website, take a look and see how they're showing up. Are they showing up in a way that that shows an individual with a disability? I mean, you see a picture here now of someone signing, right? Are there images on an employer's website that demonstrate that they get it, right? That they're paying attention to this segment of the population? And if you don't see that, it's okay to bring that up. I will tell you this: when we have conversations with college students that are looking for their first career opportunity and places to land, they are out there looking at how companies are showing up online. And if they don't see themselves on those websites, that says something, right? That sends a message. Either I'm welcome or I'm not. And so really consider how digitally your companies and employers are showing up, and how you guys are showing up, right, as in your career centers. So we challenge you to really take a look at that and do what you can to impact some change in that area if needed.
Perfect. Yes, we have a lot of great comments.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, Pat. There have been a lot of comments coming in. So thank you, everybody. It's a truly back and forth conversation today. I'm going to group some together because there are some that are aligned. I know somebody said we had a couple of comments about collaborating with local VR offices for the Windmills Disability Inclusion Training, and it's great for employers as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Beth.
I was just going to say Windmills has been around for a long time, and I know that's a great tool that VR uses for sure to help train employers. So yes, that's a great training.
Okay, some short comments just to have disability awareness trainings, testimonials. We had another comment of inviting businesses into the NC Works Career Center on certain weeknights, perhaps, just to have those open discussions.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. And, having them share what their overall diversity strategy looks like, right? What are they looking for? What's it like to work there, and what kind of culture are they looking to create? I think is a great way to help job seekers understand the commitment, right, of that company.
Perfect. And a couple of comments came in. So someone shared that they are a person that identifies with someone having a hidden disability. And something this person always says when advocating for themselves or others is that many disabilities can be on a spectrum, and each person has different needs, requirements, or accommodations. So they said this is something to keep in mind so that you can remain unbiased and don't make assumptions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. I know we say and hear often, if you've hired one person with a disability, or you've met one person with a disability, you've met one person with a disability, right? Whether that's blind, whether that's a person with a hearing that's hard of hearing or deaf, or a person with cerebral palsy. It is, we are individuals first, and everybody's needs are different, and accommodations are often. That's why, right? That's why we're charged with evaluating the accommodations on a case-by-case basis, because each individual need is different.
Perfect. Let me share one more comment, and then we'll see how the timing is, and if you'd like to move on to that secondary question. But we have a participant who has attended previous sessions, and I know there was the recommendation of adding a slide or pictures, graphics in a career center displaying, a picture or photograph, including some, individuals with disabilities. This person went ahead and updated that, but said it was not really easy to find free images. And then in the chat box, I believe someone else put some recommendations. So actually, someone else did a good place to check for free images. So we've got a lot of back and forth with our participants, contributing and helping one another today.
That's fantastic. And that is exactly, right, what we wanted as part of this discussion process is the best practices within the worlds that you guys play in the NC Works Career Centers, right? What has worked? Where have you found images? And let me just say as well, Barton Cotter, our communication specialist, will be happy as well to provide opportunities or information around where you could find some images as well. So this is all part of the rich discussion that we hope to ignite today during our presentation.
Perfect. I'm going to throw one more in. We had a comment for NC Works Next Gen Youth Services, working in collaboration with local to them high school occupational courses of study, the teachers and the students, to assist them with their transition to the workforce. So really impacting all ages.
Absolutely. And Pat, you probably have more experience in the education side of things, but just know that as part of this work, and again, this is getting to know the employers and the businesses that you are engaging with day to day. Find out about internship opportunities, right? Find out if they have apprenticeship programs, and don't hesitate to offer, right? Or to, again, encourage the inclusion of both youth and adults with disabilities in those programs. we are excited about, again, our continuing to grow our work in helping employers grow those apprenticeship programs and create new ones designed to, again, be more inclusive of North Carolinians with disabilities. So absolutely, that's an important conversation.
Awesome. All right, Beth, there's some other comments, but a lot of resources. So perhaps we can include that in the resource sheet post-session so everyone can access that. Would you like me to put the next question in and move on to that one?
I think that's great. Yeah, let's do that. And
go
so,
ahead. Oh, I'm sorry,
perfect.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so as we think about increasing the employment and the recruitment of job seekers with disabilities, what can you do to help with that effort? Is there something that you're doing now or that you could consider doing in the future to increase the recruitment of job seekers with disabilities? And again, invite you to put that in the chat box and welcome continued conversation.
Excellent. We'll give everybody a moment to go ahead and put some of their comments in. Right, and I'll just repeat that. What can you do to increase recruitment of job seekers with disabilities?
And I will say this, I think that what we know, given experiences with employers from the private sector in this space, is that as they begin this work, and I anticipate this to happen even within our career centers, is that as the culture begins to shift to be, again, a place that's safer to disclose that you have a disability, or accommodation policies and processes are kind of talked about more, people learn more about the process, you may find an uptick in requests. You may find an increase in the number of even employees working in the career centers that are willing to share their stories. That is an absolutely critical way to and a need, I think, that when we begin to see the walls kind of come down and people begin to engage in real honest and open conversations about their own experiences, and maybe it's not their experience, maybe it's that of a loved one, a sibling, a parent, that's a really key factor in breaking down the barriers. And when that happens, I do think that the conversation begins to open up, and others feel that, and job seekers will as well.
All right, that allowed some time. So I just wanted to say thank you. Those comments are starting to roll in. I'll read a few and throw it back to you, and then I'll pick up with the second set. So we need to review our outreach efforts and ensure that we are mindful and accessible to a diverse job seeker pool. We also have a comment recommending job and hiring events specifically to those who perhaps have disabilities, or focusing on employers that really are easy to work with and friendly to people with disabilities. Another comment came in: work with agencies that promote and help bridge inclusion hiring, such as NC Works and the VR community, or the community college disability services and the local workforce development boards.
Absolutely. And bringing up the idea of job fairs, and I know we're approaching that season now where we have, whether it's virtual and or in person. Gosh, it's important to be sure that as those job fairs happen, number one, how are you showing up? For example, what platform are you using if it's a virtual environment, or, where are these job fairs happening to ensure that they're happening in an accessible location?
Beth, and that's so important. The other thing I think to think about is, rather than creating exclusive job fairs for people with disabilities, I think better energy could be spent making the existing job fairs for all job seekers more inclusive, because in that way you open up the door for the inclusion right from the get-go. And maybe you support your individuals, your job seekers with disabilities, a little differently during those events, and a little more specifically. but by including them in your typical events, you'll actually spread the message of inclusion, and it'll be a more seamless experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, always. I think that's the absolutely great point. You want to be sure, and that's why I say, how are you showing up as well? Because often employers overlook the idea that, while they may be attending a diverse job fair, or their goal is to increase diversity within their organization. Again, when I say, how are you showing up? Do you have, again, images of individuals with disabilities? Do you have folks or members of your talent acquisition team or your company representatives with disabilities showing up at those events? That's a great way to make your statement, right, and show your commitment to this work.
That's right, Beth. And one practical example, I recall you and I were on a college campus couple of years ago, and there was a jobs fair going on, and it was an inclusive jobs fair, and you and I met some of the students that had hidden disabilities on the autism spectrum, and I remember one or two of them felt a little bit awkward about the whole meet and greet experience, and so I finessed and you finessed bringing them up to employers of interest to them, making the introduction, and then backing away and letting the conversation begin. Just simple things like that to make someone feel more comfortable in that experience.
Absolutely.
Will go a long way.
Absolutely. And let me not discount the contribution, the value that VR and the team bring to this conversation as well. I know they have strong partnerships with businesses across North Carolina, and I know those conversations go on a regular basis. And something as simple as having a room, a quieter space for individuals to. Maybe it is a meet and greet, and there's a lot of activity in one ballroom of the event, but you have a secondary room that's available simply to have a quiet sit down meeting if needed, that type of thing. Just simple ideas like that can really make a difference on students' experience with that at that job fair as well.
Perfect. We've got a lot more comments, so I'll try to sum up. We've got, just focus some of their work in the school system with teachers and students, getting them connected to VR and providing perhaps summer vocational internships so they're better prepared to exit and transition into jobs after graduation. Here's another good one. Ensure employers include, the inclusion, in their job descriptions, so they can pique the applicant pool and interest, and be very inclusive throughout the application, interviewing, and hiring process. We actually had another idea of having a lunch and learn on the topic to discuss the importance of it, and inviting job seekers from all ages and promote it to the entire community.
Yeah, those are all great ideas. Fantastic ideas.
Yeah. Let's see. Really, just for employers to seek and to encourage employers to seek and build partnerships with organizations that serve and support the disability community. And we did actually have a comment that really wrapped up a lot of what was said recently. If your space is more friendly to all, we'll see more diversity among us.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. And again, I do think it has to be intentional sometimes, because I think we do overlook that. So really being sure that that as you plan events, whether that's a virtual event or an in-person event, that the overall accessibility of that event is top of mind for employers.
Great. And just more comments coming in, community outreach is critical. And someone asked, thinking kind of outside the box a little bit, would it be possible perhaps to visit physical therapy offices or pharmacies? And if, they can hang informational flyers there to encourage more information, really to the larger public, and help spread the word about inclusive job opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think anywhere that you anticipate, right, a person with a disability engaging or being, I think that's great. Let me say this too, and I failed to mention this earlier, and I think that brings up a really, really good point when you talk about a physical therapy office, right? Many times, right, the individual with a disability acquires that disability at some point during their career. Okay, so we think about the return to work process for these employers and what that looks like. Do not overlook, and quite honestly, sometimes that is the best way to engage employers and businesses in this conversation. Why? Because they have hired employees, and somewhere along the way, the employee has acquired a disability, whether that is cancer, whether that is just a car accident. It could be a workers' comp injury, right? That an individual has now suffered, and they are different now than they were the day they were hired. So that return to work process is a really nice opportunity for you to engage with businesses saying, you know what? There's a way to retain the talents of those individuals as well, right? The investment's been made on the front end, but now that individual may have a condition, may have some type of a disability. How do you retain that talent? Well, that starts with looking at the return to work process, ensuring that if a person needs an accommodation because of some medical condition that they have suffered during the employment experience, that is an awesome way to say, to again enhance that business case and saying this is an opportunity to retain the talents and that investment in that employee. So don't underestimate the power and the impact that can have in this conversation. Barton, did you have a comment?
Yes, and again, that doesn't have to be limited to physical support. If physical therapy, the same is true for species of mental health support. Other.
Very true. Very true. Not just physical therapy, but mental health is a significant opportunity, I think, to encourage and welcome individuals into the workplace.
Yeah, and Beth, I think in this world where we all tend to be siloed in our own discipline, when we stretch across and speak to the medical community and the healers and the people that are in the mental health profession, so important to help them understand that the people that they are treating for physical and mental conditions have lives they want to get back to and careers that they want to pick up on, and that in fact that can help to accelerate their recovery and encourage them. People with substance abuse, the data is very clear. If those individuals have a goal like going back to work, or if they are able to retain their job through supports, they often are far quicker to recover or to stay compliant with whatever therapy may be recommended for them.
Yeah. Well, that's a great comment, and I think a great place for us to wrap up. And Colette, I don't know if you have any final thoughts, but I think at this point we'll be respectful of time and thank you all so much for your open conversation. We had a lot of good discussion today, and we just invite you back. February 10th will be our next session on diversity, equity, inclusion, your role in disability inclusion, where we're going to take a look at some of the job descriptions, the business service representatives, and the roles that you play, and how how we can kind of share with you our thoughts on how your role can impact the growth of the disability inclusion conversation within your career centers.